As of May 2020, over 5.2 million people have been infected with COVID-19, of which 338,000 have died. Scientists around the world are working tirelessly to fight this disease. In this episode of Simple Science with Jumbo Eggs, we will learn about some of the ways scientists have been looking into for us to enjoy once again spending time with one another outside of our homes. COVID-19 is the name of the disease that is a pandemic right now, and SARS-CoV-2 is the name of the virus that causes this disease. But it's kind of difficult to pronounce the virus's name, so we'll just call it COVID-19 virus in this video. When you think about fighting COVID-19, the vaccine is probably the first thing that comes to your mind. You're right, currently, the vaccine is probably the most promising way to fight this disease. Vaccines have already worked wondrously well against the other viral diseases like polio and smallpox, so it's not a completely new method that nobody has ever heard of. The fact that we are familiar with vaccines in general is a good thing, because when the vaccine for COVID-19 finally comes out, we are almost certain it will work. Many scientists believe it will take about 12 to 18 months for the vaccine to be developed, although some think this can be done by as early as fall 2020. So why does this take so long? Didn't Edward Jenner in 1796 just take some cowpox stuff and put it into a random boy and call it a day? Well, actually, it almost took 3 more years for the vaccination to be given to the public, but let's not go too deep into the history of vaccination, lest we digress. The real problem is that even though making vaccines with today's technology is trivially easy, making them safe and effective is an entirely different matter. Like all drugs, vaccines can have side effects. To minimize the risk of serious side effects, every vaccine and drug in development need to be initially tested in human volunteers in a process called a clinical trial. This is because what scientists find using cell culture or lab animals often give very different results than what they find in people. The clinical trials has 3 phases: Phase 1, Phase 2, and Phase 3. Each phase can take several months, which is why it takes at least a year to develop any vaccine. If the vaccine does pass all of these trials in the end, then it can be made available to the public. One interesting type of COVID-19 vaccine currently in clinical trials is an mRNA vaccine. Historically, vaccines are made from either proteins isolated from germs or live but weakened germs. But preparing these materials takes a lot of time and money, so it's difficult to scale up the production fast enough to meet the huge demand in a pandemic. The mRNA vaccine works by just giving people the mRNAs that code for the proteins found in the germs. When these mRNA enter our body, our cells make the germ proteins using these codes. These proteins are then presented on the outside of the cells, which the immune cells recognize and develop immunity towards them.
Yesterday, there has been some promise with hydroxychloroquine as potential therapy for people who are infected with coronavirus. Is there any evidence to suggest that, as with malaria, it might be used as a prophylaxis against COVID-19?
Another potential treatment for COVID-19 you may have heard about are chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine. These drugs are usually used to treat malaria, but why do people think these will work for COVID-19? One reason is that the chloroquines can help tone down the immune system. People with COVID-19 can sometimes have overreactive immune system called cytokine storm. When this happens, the immune system tries to do everything it can to kill the virus, even if it means killing the person. It's kind of like if you have bed bugs and they're annoying the hell out of you. You set your house on fire to kill them. Yeah, you don't have bed bugs anymore, but your house is gone now. But the chloroquines are known to have immunosuppressive effects, which may help calm the immune cells down so they don't end up destroying their own hosts. Another reason scientists think the chloroquines can help fight COVID-19 is because they can prevent the virus from entering our cells. The virus binds to a protein on our cells called ACE2, and this triggers the cells to engulf the virus particles. The chloroquines can interfere with this process, so the virus particles stay outside. Unfortunately, chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine don't appear to be an effective treatment in this case, according to a recent study. In this study, 96,032 COVID-19 patients from 671 hospitals who were treated with chloroquine or hydroxychloroquine, among others, were followed. The author concluded that the patients on chloroquine or hydroxychloroquine had increased number of deaths and even a higher possibility of getting disturbed heart rhythm, which doesn't really sound that bad, but it's actually pretty serious because it can kill people. So you probably want to think twice about taking these medications for COVID-19.
What's E1101? It's an experimental antiserum from Yale Virology. I figured it might be worth a try.
Perhaps one of the most intuitive ways to fight COVID-19 aside from the vaccine is to get help from the survivors. When a person recovers from an infection, they develop antibodies against the pathogen. In the case of COVID-19, these antibodies can either inactivate the virus so it can't enter our cells, or tag it so it's easier for the immune cells to find and get rid of it. One approach is to ask these survivors to donate their blood to help sick patients recover. This is called convalescent plasma. Convalescent means a person who is recovering after an illness, and plasma means the watery part of blood where you can find the antibodies. Preliminary studies do show that this does seem to help the patients recover faster, but the problem with this therapy is limited availability. To treat a disease with antibodies, you need a lot of antibodies. This is because one antibody molecule can bind and inactivate only one protein. And since a virus particle can have many copies of the protein the antibody can target, you would need the antibody molecules to be many times the number of the virus particle. Coupled with the fact that you can only get them from healthy volunteers without other infectious diseases, it's difficult to treat COVID-19 patients with convalescent plasma therapy. What if we make these antibodies in the lab? Even though it's technically possible, the production process is time-consuming and expensive because antibodies are very large molecules. We also need to make sure these antibodies are safe, which isn't always the case because the immune system may react to them and cause an allergic reaction or even deadly cytokine storm. There are a few other ways scientists have learned to fight COVID-19 by exploiting the weakness in the virus itself. Viruses sometimes mutate enough that the pre-existing vaccines no longer work against them. We would be in trouble if we finally get the vaccines after the long wait, but the virus has mutated so the vaccine doesn't work. Also, vaccines do not work well in the elderly and very young babies because their immune systems do not work well. So these next approaches can provide a second line of defense we can use in cases like these. The first method works by stopping the viral genome from replicating. The COVID-19 virus has an RNA genome, and this replicates by a viral protein called RNA-dependent RNA polymerase. It's a mouthful, but it just means this protein uses a piece of RNA as a template to make another piece of RNA, which in this case is the viral genome. This protein works a bit differently than human RNA polymerases, so it can also use RNA pieces it's not supposed to use. This is where the drug called Remdesivir comes in. Remdesivir looks similar to a normal RNA building block, but when the viral RNA polymerase picks this up, it can stop the RNA production altogether. This decreases the number of viral genomes, slowing down the virus replication to buy the immune system time to clean them up. The second part of the COVID-19 virus scientists target is the S protein. S stands for the spike, because, well, it looks like a spike. Once the virus enters our body, the tips of the S proteins are processed and cut off by our own enzymes in our bodies called furin and TMPRSS2. This is how the virus can only infect certain species. For example, if we take a bat coronavirus and put it in us, the virus would not be able to enter our cells. But if we cleave off the S protein and then put it in us, then it would be able to go into our cells. This means if we block furin from cleaving the S proteins, then the COVID-19 virus will become much less efficient in infecting us. Currently, drugs called chemostat mesylate and imidine aim to target the S protein's function. The third method aims to block the virus's own protein cleaving function. When the COVID-19 virus makes its own proteins, these are first made into long strips of a larger protein. Then a viral protein called main protease cuts this large protein into different pieces. This is kind of like getting a large candy roll and cutting it into smaller pieces to make the final candy product. Since this main protease is only found in viruses, scientists are studying if we can stop this protein from working to stop the virus from replicating. Lopinavir and ritonavir are currently being used to stop HIV from replicating by exploiting this exact method, so scientists are studying if these drugs can be used in the case of COVID-19. Last but not least, assembly of the viral particle itself can be blocked so the virus can't be formed. The outside structure of the COVID-19 virus is organized by proteins called M and E. If we can disturb these proteins so they don't find each other, it would be possible to slow their replication. According to computer simulations, bellocino and methylflavonone E are some of the chemicals found to potentially work this way. These were 7 of many ways to fight COVID-19. We hope that one day, all of this effort will help bring a swift end to this pandemic so it becomes just a thing of the past, just like how it did with the 1918 flu pandemic. If you liked this video, please subscribe and like so we can bring more content to you soon. Your continued support is our greatest happiness. Until next time, stay safe.